Let me start the live stream.
Jeff joining us?
He should be, yeah, he should be coming in soon.
Was there an issue?
There was with the link that was sent out today.
Okay.
There he is.
Yeah.
Oh,
There we
that's
go.
the one I used.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know then. All right, looks like Jeff is coming in as Deb
I'm on
Jones.
now.
So we are going to
Mhm.
change his name.
This is the second time in 2 days I've had problems getting on. I don't know if the links are wrong or my computer's messed up. Probably that's what it is. So you got through with your notifications, Deb?
We haven't started yet.
Oh, okay.
Let's see.
Because usually you go through those before we call the meeting to order.
I'll
If
do
not, I'll just call it to order.
go ahead and call it to order and I'll go through it at the
Okay.
public hearing.
So I'll call the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting to order. Before we start, I don't know, we can do roll call now or?
Mhm. That's fine.
Okay. So I got Michael Kane
Here.
here. Alzad,
Here.
Barbara Tarbox,
Yeah.
Sue Sutherland,
Here.
Steve Hudacek,
Here.
Kevin Fetfall. Is Kevin here? No?
Nope.
Okay. So we have our regular members are all here. So I'll turn it over to you, Deb, to go through the description for running the meeting.
Great, thank you. So we do have a public hearing tonight. If anyone in the audience wants to speak to the commission, you will need to raise your hand so that you'll be recognized by the chairman. In order to raise your hand on an Apple device, you can find the raise hand icon by hovering at the top of your screen. On a Mac, by hovering at the bottom of your screen. If you're on a telephone, you can dial *9 and that will raise your hand. Feel
Excuse
free-
me, Deb.
Hmm?
To raise your hand, you have to go to the participants box at the bottom.
You
And-
can, that's right. And in
There
some
isn't a
cases,
raised hand anymore on the.
it
that I
may
see on
be,
my screen.
At the bottom.
Yeah.
It's at the, yeah, but I don't see it without going into the participant box.
that's because you're a co-host.
Oh, okay.
So, right, so anyone in the public should feel free to go ahead and raise their hand at any time during the hearing, just so that we know you're waiting to speak. And then the chair will recognize you at the time he's ready to take public communications. So you'd use those techniques both for the public hearing as well as for public communications, which is later on the agenda.
Okay, so we'll move on to public hearings. We have a public hearing for Lampyre Estates expiration. Before we get started, I don't know if anybody in the public is on. Are they, Deb?
I'm not sure, but I want to go through.
But I'll go through our
Yes,
method of doing it is that we'll hear from the applicant first, town staff report, and then open it up to anybody in the public that wants to address the commission. Following that, we'll open it up to commissioners for any questions they have or any other information they feel they need. And then repeat the cycle between the public and the commissioners and whoever else needs to respond to any questions or comments so that we can have all those issues answered. Because we have to close a public hearing. We cannot accept any information after that from either the public or the applicant. So I'll turn it over to the applicant, which is the town staff, I guess.
that's right, that's right. I'm going to share my screen so you can see where this subdivision is. So Lampyre Estates is a 6-lot subdivision. It was originally approved by the Planning Commission February 8, 2005. It involved 6 lots, as I said, plus some cul-de-sac construction here, here, and here. An open space dedication, which is here and mostly wetlands. No work has begun on this site. No lots have been sold. The wetland permit has expired. In 2017, the tax collector foreclosed on the 6 lots, knowing that the Office of Planning and Development Services held the deeds for the open space and for the rights of way. Work is required to be completed on the public improvements by February 8, 2019. There are no additional extensions for this time period that are available. Both property owners were notified of this hearing, being the town of Groton and Gold Investments, which still owns the cul-de-sac bulbs and the open space. I haven't heard from any of those entities, no written comments. As you know, a subdivision is considered expired when there's a failure to complete all work within the time allowed by statute, provided the Planning and Zoning Commission files a notice of expiration in land records. And that is the subject of this hearing tonight, whether or not to file that expiration on land records. The reason we are expiring the subdivision is so that the tax collector can sell this property as one piece, rather than selling off individual lots, knowing that it's unlikely the public improvements would ever be complete. So she will sell it as one piece, and you may see another subdivision application come through on it. And I can answer any questions that you have.
Okay. Do we have anybody in the public that would like to address the commission tonight? I don't see anyone. We don't have any phone calls or anything, do we?
No, I don't see anyone raising their hand. No.
Okay. So then we'll open it up to commissioners for any questions they have. We'll start with Michael Kane.
I don't have any specific questions other than I just wonder, well, it doesn't matter. I have no questions.
You have any concerns?
Well, my concern, I guess, is that, like, I see the Noank school and I see the same kind of a property that abuts the property up there, and how it's created such an issue for the town. If the town owns this, then are we going to face the same kind of an issue where neighbors are going to want to buy little pieces of this thing from the town, and then we're splitting it up? But no questions.
Okay. Let's see, Hal, Zod, do you have anything?
Nothing big. I just wondered where I see that there's the paper street of Lampyre going through, which really surprised me that it didn't, because right now I think the only way in and out of most of those back streets is through Indigo. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah. So that's a lot of houses back there with not even an emergency way to get back out. Was there any, at least plans on paper or something for filling with gravel or something?
So the subdivision plan actually shows a large pedestrian walk on Lampyre. I think you can kind of see it goes across a good deal of wetlands.
Yeah.
But it is possible to walk through there, and with a little bit of clearing, I suppose even a fire truck could get through.
Okay. Yeah, I'm looking at where the wet part is. It seems like there should be in need of a culvert or something to get over part of that.
There is one here in this area.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, all right. All right, it's my only question. Otherwise, I don't even know if we care if it's such a wetland little strange piece of property. I'm not sure I'd even mind if people started buying off corners of it, because I don't think we want to do anything with it. I'm okay.
Mm-hmm. Barbara Tarbox? You You have any questions, Barbara, or concerns?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I muted myself and forgot to unmute myself. Anyway, I think it's a good idea to sell it as one big piece.
Mm,
That's my only comment.
Okay. Sue Sutherland?
No, I think it's what people were talking about, the wetlands, that was a concern because they kind of crisscross around, it looks like. But yeah, no comments other than that.
Okay. Steve Suchek?
No real comments. I was just curious whether the exact same subdivision with our new regs could go in. Has there any, changes been made where this would look different? Just say if another developer came in.
No, I think this same subdivision could be approved by the current regs.
That's it. Just a question.
Mhm. Okay, I don't have any concerns with the action. So if there are no other issues, I guess I'll move to close the public hearing. No one in the public's joined or anything, right?
Yeah, let me
Yeah.
just check one more time.
Just to make sure that
No,
somebody.
but Jeff, this is Kevin. I apologize. I had trouble getting in from a technology standpoint, which is rare, but here.
Okay, you're on board now.
I apologize.
Oh, no, everybody, or I had problems too, so. So do you have anything, Kevin, or you want?
I do not, Jeff. Thank you.
Okay. All right. If no one on the public is there,
No.
wants to speak, then I'll move to close the public hearing. Is there a second?
Back in that.
Hmm?
Michael Kane.
Oh, okay. So it's moved in second. Does anyone have any concerns with seconding with the motion to to close the public hearing? Hearing none, we'll vote on motion to close the hearing. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is carried unanimously. And we'll move on to the next item is consideration of public hearings, Lampyre Estates. I have a concern with a motion. Normally, the motions have an address in them. Is that necessary to find this in the records? All it refers to is Lampyre Estates.
Yeah,
Do we need to insert the PIN numbers or?
this, hang on. In my time here, I think,
Or
we-
the site plan, the site
right,
plan number or something.
we've expired 2 other subdivisions in the time that I've been here. And when we prepare the notice of expiration, that's when we put in all the identifying information so that it will be on the land records.
No, I meant our motion because the public hearing ad didn't identify PIN numbers either.
Right. Lampyre Estates, Lampyre Road.
Yeah. Well, you have to go to find out where it is.
Mhm.
You can go into GIS, but you have to know the tricks to get in.
Right.
Hmm?
Right. I mean, there's also contact information that was in that ad as well.
Well, I wasn't complaining about the ad. I'm just saying neither of them did
Yeah.
it. But I was just wondering whether if the PIN numbers should be inserted here. I don't think it affects making a motion tonight, but if you can just do that. But you don't think it's necessary?
In the motion, no, but it will be on the notice of expiration that goes into land records.
Okay. All right, so I'll make a motion to state that says the Lampyre Estates subdivision was approved by the Town of Groton Planning Commission on February 8th, 2005. The approval called for the completion of public improvements, including cul-de-sac construction and associated infrastructure on or before February 8th, 2015, extended by the Planning Commission to February 8th, 2019. These improvements have not been completed, and in accordance with Connecticut General Statutes 8-26C, the Planning and Zoning Commission therefore declares the Lampyre Estates subdivision to have expired. The commission directs the Director of Planning and Development Services to place a notice of subdivision expiration on the land records of the town clerk and to provide any other legal required notices in this manner. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we'll vote on this motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is carried unanimously. Okay, next item on the agenda, approval of minutes. We have none. Public communications. Does anyone on the commission have any communications to bring forth to the meeting?
I do not.
Does staff have any?
No.
Does anyone in the public have any? Or wish to address the commission tonight?
Doesn't appear that way.
No hands raised?
No.
Okay, special permits, we have none. Subdivisions, none. So the next item would be site plans. SIT 20-08, 54 West Main Street Brewery, 54 West Main Street, CAM. Is the applicant online?
Yeah, the applicant is Greg Vettis. He's online. I just tried to promote him to a panelist. Yeah,
There he
here
is.
he goes.
Oh, okay. So if the applicant would like to address the commission, this application. State your
Yep.
name.
This is Greg Fettis. Sorry, I cut out for a second. Greg Fettis with Fettis Engineering, 70 Essex Street, Mystic, Connecticut, representing Walter Bansley, who's the owner of the property at 54 West Main Street. So basically currently it's a Bank of America building, which you probably all know. This was a bank for a long time. I think Bruce did a nice job of summarizing that in his staff report of the history. So I won't go into it. But currently it's a kind of an office for Mr. Bansley's law firm, as well as Century 21 is in there, as well as possibly another mortgage guys upstairs right now. So it's basically converting that to a restaurant use, standard restaurant use, which is allowed in the zone. We're not proposing any real changes to the building itself, the exception of a couple minor items, I would think, in the back. We're adding a rear door, which will be for accessible access, as well as a second form of egress out of the building, which it currently really doesn't have. There'll be a ramp added in the back, some landscaping in the back, some buffering on the entrance from Bank Street to a residential zone. There's a little bit of equipment on the back, standing in West Main Street, looking at the back of the building to the back right of the building. There's a couple pieces of equipment. One of the items that they're going to have inside the building is the ability to brew beer. It's not a full-blown brewery, but it's really just to complement the restaurant use and supply beer for the restaurant. We're also adding seating in the grassed areas on either side of the entrance to the Bank of America building. That's I think 20 seats on either side, about 5 tables. Oh, thank you, Bruce.
Yeah, I
So we're
thought I should share the plan.
Thank you. As you can see, we're doing pervious pavers. So we got landscaping against the building, as well as landscaping and street trees on the front that butts up to the sidewalk. We're kind of leaving everything else in place. Let me see what I missed here. We're taking down 2 of the freestanding signs and leaving up the kind of the one larger sign. There's a detail which we can get to, and we're also adding a sign to the building. And again, there's details for all of this information, as well as floor plans, about 123 seats inside, 40 seasonal seats outside. Parking is 100% validation. The basement as well as the mezzanine are storage for the most part. Mechanicals are down there, and on the mezzanine there'll be an office for use for the restaurant. And as for I can go into the CAM application also and then answer any questions. Since proximity to the Mystic River and we're in a flood zone, again, we're not increasing the footprint or adding any impervious coverage. The patios themselves are pervious, also allows some storage of stormwater. We're adding a considerable amount of landscaping, both in the front and the back, clean those areas up, and add buffering along the northwest property line. And you can see the ramp. We did get historic approval for the majority of the plan. We need to go back for the rear door that's at the top of the ramp. They wanted a different one than we proposed, as well as the ramp. We proposed an aluminum ramp, which will be changing to wood. We added a trash enclosure in the back. We had some bike parking on the side. That's about it, unless there's any questions.
Turn it over to staff for their report. I assume that's you, Bruce.
Yeah, that's me. So Bruce Lofgren here from the Office of Planning and Development Services. Greg did a good job summarizing, so I won't repeat everything, but I'll just kind of a couple aspects from our review. So the use of this restaurant is going to be categorized as a standard restaurant use in the table of permitted uses. It is located in the MDD district, and standard restaurants are permitted by right in that district. Building footprint will remain unchanged. The only structural improvements will be the ADA accessible ramp in the back there and the pervious patio in the front. Greg mentioned that this site is located in an historic district. A certificate of appropriateness is required for some of the improvements, so they'll have to go back to the HDC. Landscaping, so there's landscaping in the front here along West Main Street. 2 street trees are proposed. Additional landscaping is right along the front of the building, and there is a row of arborvitaes that is proposed in the back northwest corner of the site, and that'll be used as a buffer. So, as proposed, that the site meets the landscaping requirements of the zoning regulations. Signs. So originally the site plan had 3 different freestanding signs in the front. 2 are proposed to be eliminated. The one older metal sign that's freestanding is proposed to remain, and a wall sign on the front facade of the building is also proposed. And both of those signs meet the zoning regulations and will require HGC approval if they have not already. Parking. So parking for a standard restaurant for 163 seats requires 25 to 33 parking spaces after you apply the 50% reduction in the MDD. The applicant is proposing to offset 100% of this parking requirement through the validation program, which is allowed under section 8.2-6E in the zoning regulations. But they will be required to post required signage on the front doors, register outdoor seating areas on the menus, and provide OPDS staff verification that they are enrolled on an annual basis. And so the only parking spot that will be on the site would be the one ADA parking spot in the back there. And everything else would be through validation program. They are proposing a 10 by 50 loading area in the back corner there. And as Greg mentioned, an enclosed dumpster for trash. Site is located in the CAM district. It's over 200, 300 feet away from the coastal resource, and there's no footprint expansion. The patio is pervious, so staff has no concerns with that aspect of the application. Other than that, that's my summary review of it. I can take any questions.
Okay. I'll open it up then to the commission for comments and questions. Start with you, Mike.
Thank you, Jeff, Mr. Chairman. So I do have some questions. I've gone by this site several times, and actually this morning again recently, and I don't know what's going on with the, not so much this property, but like the pizza place and the property behind it, but it seems as if there's a feud or something because the parking back there is a mess. There are parking spots where those trees are right now, but they're parallel, and then there's some chain running along there. I don't know what the issue is or what the situation is at Mystic Pizza, but maybe that should be reviewed at some point because it seems like it's impacting this in a very negative way. So my questions then, Greg, outside sales of beer from this place, will they be selling growlers or anything like that that'll be going out of this place, or just everything will be consumed in the restaurant?
I believe, I don't know the answer to that. Kind of probably, I would say whatever's allowed in this kind of use and what kind of permit they have with the state. However, Walter Bansley, I believe he's on the phone. I think he can answer that better than I can. I don't know if he has to raise his hand or how that works.
I can't promote him as a panelist with the shared screen right now. I don't know if Deb, if you can promote him.
Well, it's not critical, I suppose. I just, I would like to know that. I don't have to know it this second, I suppose. The patio in the front, you said it was pervious and that they're pavers. Are they a special kind of paver? Because typically we don't look at that stuff as being very pervious, if it is at all.
They are pervious. I mean, I can tell you that over at the Oyster Club, 10 years ago, we had originally proposed pervious pavers. And during this renovation, which they just completed, that they were able to basically vacuum out and restore them to pervious by putting in new material.
There is a difference. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, there is a difference, and they need to be, if they are expected to be pervious, they need to be maintained.
Yes.
And then I can't see on the print, but is there some sort of dividing barrier between these patios and the public sidewalk? Fence?
Yes, there is. There's
rail or something like that?
There's a fence and there's a detail, I believe it's on the second sheet of the plan that Bruce has up right now.
Okay. And the only other thing I'm wondering about here, is there a grease trap, or will there be one? And then what kind of a container for the for grease that would be, recycled?
Yeah, so there's a grease trap that I can almost guarantee 100% it's going to be one of the under-counter ones inside the building. And the trash enclosure is large enough to house the proper grease container.
Okay, so then we're losing those parking spaces that run along the north end of that driveway, I suppose you'd call it, to allow
Well,
trucks
I
to get in?
we're not, I guess we're not losing it for that purpose. We're losing it because, and Walter can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe Mystic Pizza put up the chains and the barrels and the cones and whatever else, and it's not allowing it to function the way it did. That is the property line, kind of as outlined. So, I mean, they have every right to do that. I think, I'm not sure what their motive is, but we're not working together. You're correct on that part, but my client is willing to kind of make it a more usable than what's out there.
I mean, I don't know, maybe staff would have an answer to this, but is that allowed for someone to put a parking lot like that, to run a fence right down the middle of it?
That belongs to a separate piece of property.
I understand that, but this is a shared parking lot and there's
No, it
egress
It
and,
was a leased parking lot by the bank, and that place is advertised for megabucks. It's for sale.
no, I'm not talking about the one in the back, Jeff, right behind the pizza house.
Oh, that one. Yeah.
That parking lot right now has a fence running right where the property line is. There's a fence running right down the middle of it.
Hmm.
Barrels and chains.
Well, some of those thing is fenced off because of the property behind the bank, or what used to be the bank.
No, yeah, well, I mean, it just seems like there's some sort of it's like a grievance fence or something. I don't even know what you'd describe it as, but yellow chain and white sheetrock buckets with pipes coming out of them running right down the middle of that parking lot where the property line is. But if an emergency vehicle went in through there, they'd have to barrel over all of that business.
Well, I can say that our stretch from Bank Street into our property will be clear unless there's a truck unloading or something. But there is adequate room on our own property for someone to get through to the back of the property.
Yeah,
I can say I don't know why Mystic Pizza chose to put those up. I'm not sure why, because it affects both properties, I
well,
would say, negatively.
yeah, no, definitely. And I know that alley between the two buildings, quite frequently cars park in there. And so I don't know, there's no parking signs. There's not really any room for them. They'd have to go on that building. But my problems are less with the bank than with the pizza place and how that's operating. So maybe that's another issue for another day. Those are all my questions.
Yeah, and I can address that too. I mean, that was my first impression too when reviewing this. It creates kind of an awkward, not really usable space, but it's really a civil issue and nothing that myself as staff can impose on another property owner. To address the access concern you have, this plan was reviewed by the fire marshal and they were okay with it, but yeah, I don't disagree that it's.
Well, I guess my
unfortunate,
question is,
on a piece of
someone puts
property.
up plastic buckets with pipes coming out of them and a yellow fence. What would prevent them putting up a chain link fence down the middle that was permanent?
That would need site plan approval.
All right.
And if they
But
did,
this doesn't.
right.
Buckets, no, unlikely. We can reach out to the fire marshal and ask him specifically if this is a problem for him. I think he probably has more authority over getting it removed than we do at this point.
I mean, it certainly is an impediment to flow, I would say. And if someone went through there at night or people walking through there, I don't know. All right, that's it. Thank you.
We agree.
Mhm. Cal, you have anything to say on this? Is Hal there?
You're on mute.
Hmm?
Hal is muted.
How's that? Is that better?
No.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, let me dig into the lot too. So the lot directly behind the bank, that was leased. That's not part of this, I'm gathering, even though the reality of how this thing's being used, had been used forever, was that evenings when the bank was closed, for as long as it's been a bank, that's been extra parking that got used by Mystic Pizza customers. So I can see where suddenly this kind of affects Mystic Pizza from going from having 25 or 30, 25 spaces to having 0 in one fell swoop, and in fact having someone competing for parking space next to them. So cooperation really needed to happen here, and it didn't. The opposite happened. So actually what I'm seeing though is that to get to the handicap space, you have to drive in, head into the space, and there isn't enough room to turn out, so you've got to back all the way out. Am I not seeing that right? Will they actually, or will they be able to come out the driveway?
I think you would exit out the driveway between the buildings.
Okay.
It's
So
one way out.
All right.
That's
Even
not
though-
blocked off. And in fact, my clients removed some of the bollards there and chains as part of this proposal to create a little more room.
Okay.
If you look alongside that by the bike parking, those
Yeah.
bollards there and chains will be removed.
Yeah. Well, I saw that. Just I knew what that was in there. It was pretty weird in there, but it allowed for pedestrians to move and not get run over by the cars that go through there. So I understood why it was there. But what's the status of the leased parking space behind there?
Well, it's no longer leased and it's owned by the property to the rear, and it's for sale, as someone mentioned, and for, whatever, one point something million.
Oh, and the access to it is by Mystic Pizza's property or the bank's property
I believe the access is through
Through the
off of Pearl Street.
off of Pearl Street. Oh, even stranger.
The elite, I don't think they have rights to get to it from Bank Street, and definitely not from West Main.
Wow. Wow.
Fenced off.
Okay. As I know, we're certainly going to hear from the public on this at some point when we say we're going to put in a 100-seat restaurant with 0 parking and validation into the art museum that's already at capacity every weekend now. So I know it's permitted, but I have to honestly say, maybe it's not so bad for the wrong reasons. There's 2 church parking lots that are going to get filled up now. Or they'll have to charge for it or something like that. Because this does push out parking on the wrong side of town where there just really isn't much. A little detail for the fencing I noticed around the front seating areas is it looked like the total section of the fence, there's a dimension on there. It's this outdoor seating area fence detail on the left, and it shows it being 2 feet tall, which means I'm going to have people standing and maneuvering and walking by it and pulling their seats out next to a 2-foot tall fence, which means I'm going to have people falling over a 2-foot tall fence because it's just about the level of their seats. So I'd offhand say that it's got to be taller than that. It's a very nice looking fence, but at 2 feet, it's just a tripping hazard, especially since it doesn't show up many. Where it's next to a planter, that's fine, but where it's next to the driveway where people will be walking, well, not as many people now, nobody can park there, but where it's next to the front entrance and you have those little gates, I can just see.
Well, we do, it is behind the landscaping in the front, so people on West Main Street won't have a problem with it. Yes, on the side, it does go along there, but it's really just meant to control who's inside and who's outside.
Yeah, well,
but I think if the commission felt 3 feet was more appropriate, I'm sure my client would be on board with that.
I think way more appropriate, something where you can see it, because at 2 feet, you will be, that's below the level of the tables. You won't know it's there until you've tripped over it. I see there's little gates in front of there, which I know you really won't need to use much. It just shows a little gate. But you're going to have the public and wait staff going up and down those stairs and making the turn with a 2-foot fence there. That sounds treacherous to me. Bad enough to have planting things, but at least there's plants coming out of the planters, so that will both cushion your fall, as it were, but also to announce better that it's there. The ramp looks fine to me. It's just the one space back there. Is there only one space? Oh, there's no parking at all back there, so I guess one space would be enough, since it's based on how many parking spaces you have. That's a tricky one. Little shades of things pass. Any bicycle racks?
Yeah, right on the back left corner of the building there alongside. Two.
Very good. All right. And lighting for these table areas? The front
We weren't
areas?
proposing any new lighting. There's some lighting on the building, as well as some just kind of ambient lighting from the street lighting and so forth. So we weren't really proposing anything out there on the patios.
Really? Okay. I suppose if you add any, then we'll get to see it, as opposed to somebody deciding that it's dark and then having floodlights go up.
Yeah, no matter what, there won't be floodlights going up.
All right, that's all I have.
Sidewalk.
Thank you.
Okay. Barbara?
Yeah, I have, well, I guess it's all one concern, and that's parking, including the handicap parking. It's just, it's how it's said, the Mystic Art Association lot is full as it is, and how can you add that much more parking? It is just unrealistic, totally unrealistic. I was thinking that as much as I would like to see that outdoor seating, that the patio areas, especially nowadays, but this won't last forever, perhaps eliminating those two patio areas would reduce the need for as many parking spots. It also looks terribly crowded to me. I go by there all the time, and I just don't see 10 tables working out there. Very close together, very close to the sidewalk, very close to the driveway. I just think it's too crowded. And you only need one handicap parking spot for this number of people. That just doesn't seem reasonable to me. And yeah, clearly there's an issue with Mystic Pizza and an issue with that other parking lot being so, I don't know, expensive for one thing, but I just don't see how this could work. As much as I would love to see a brewery there, I really, really would personally love to see a brewery there. I try to think, well, what if it was some other totally kind of business, I don't know what, that would require that amount of parking? Would I be so much in favor of it? Or am I just in favor of it because it's going to be a brewery? So I'm really at a quandary over this. I think it's too much, too big a project. That's all.
Sue Sutherland?
Yes, thanks, Dick. I have some similar concerns. I'm not sure what the rules are on how many parking spaces you need for it to be ADA, but I think a restaurant this size, only having one is it's not a good message to those people who have difficulties in even getting to the restaurant. This certainly wouldn't work in Sun City or some other places, but I mean, in Connecticut here, I think it would be a much better gesture to have at least more than one. It's nice that the ramp's there and everything, but you're only serving maybe one person at a time or something at a very large restaurant. I guess the other thing too, we're back to the parking issue, which was always, when the zoning commission was around, was a big deal too. And I think we're at the stage where we're almost becoming, the levers going over to the irresponsible category, because we know that the Mystic Museum lot is full and it's expensive. And we're having, in this project, which is a great project in a lot of ways, we'll be adding so many cars and they'll have no option but to be parking on the street just farther away. And if I had a great magic wand to solve all this, that'd be terrific. But I think the idea that the church parking lots are somehow going to take up slack, from what we used to hear at the zoning commission, that was not realistic. There was no agreement. Cars were not allowed to park there. If that were to change, and in some ways it really should change, the hours are, I think, compatible to providing parking, that would make a huge difference. But somebody needs to step in and try to get a better solution. And if it were me, I think the lowest cost possibility would be, see if we can't do something with the churches. They would get something at least. I mean, if they were to get what Mystic Museum got per parking spot, that might be very attractive. But something really needs to be done. I think it's unfair to the rest of the residents in that area that with a project this size, those who had maybe a small problem before are going to have a bigger problem, let alone the traffic and everything. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Steve?
Yeah, similar concerns. Greg, you started off saying that we're not doing many mods, but you're turning a bank into a brew pub. So you got a fairly substantial exhaust stack that's going to be visible from the street. I'm looking at the south elevation right now. Not too keen on that. The parking issue, not too keen on that. I'm just, I don't have a solution, but that all that parking in the back is essentially not being used by either property right now. Is that my understanding?
Well, the property's for sale, so I mean, they're not gonna encumber it when it's for sale with any kind of agreements, and even then it would be fair. I mean, we're not doing anything outside of the regulations allow. We do have that one handicap spot on site. There is one kind of right across on Water Street that's on the street. So we have two within proximity. Technically, that'd be the most we'd be required. Granted, one's not on our site, but we don't either parking on site. So this is
Breaking up.
just when that regulation was written. I'm breaking up.
Yeah.
When that regulation was written, prior to that regulation being written, believe me, we had, for other projects, we'd scoured every property within like a mile radius of downtown to kind of meet the requirements 2 or 3 or 4 years ago with parking. And you could not get any substantial agreements from anyone that would solve the problem of parking. And I found I go downtown quite a bit. You can always find a spot. I don't think we've, even last night there was plenty of room in the lot at the Mystic Arts Center. Yeah, maybe on the weekends it gets pretty full. But there's always there's always spots. I mean, this is what the regulation was written for a restaurant. You know, there's more requirements for office of on-street parking. And we would love to work something out with Mystic Pizza and or the property behind us. But the reality is, you know, we're kind of dealt the hand we have, which is the building. We're making the most of it. I think we're doing, you know, what we can with our neighbors. We're willing to work with Mystic Pizza. You know, we think pedestrian traffic as well as, you know, Mystic Art Center, validation. You know, there is street parking that's still out there. You might have to drive around a little bit, but you're going to find it. I've never not found a spot and drove away from downtown Mystic.
Okay.
So just another question on, so this is an intensification of use. This will see a special permit?
This is a permitted use in the zone.
But Deb, we don't have,
Yes,
No, as part of the zoning regulation amendments, we eliminated a number of special permit uses.
and so even though this is an intensification of use, it will not see a special permit.
It will not. The intensification is being addressed by site plan approval.
So this is, if this goes through, then this is the end. There's no hearing, there's no nothing, no public involvement.
Correct. That's correct. Aside from the Historic District Commission, those are public hearings.
And we were before the Historic Commission last Tuesday. They've kind of conceded the whole venting system for hoods on restaurants just because there's not a way around it. Ours is in the back. Yes, if you're standing on the street, you probably won't see it. But you know, the way we show the elevation, you're probably standing, you know, back by the entrance to the parking lot and looking, and that maybe you'll see it from there. It's not, they had no problem with it. They had no problem with anything in the front of the building. They only had a problem with our door going into the building from the rear, as well as the ramp being aluminum. So we need to go back. We already have approval for all the front, everything except for the ramp and the door. So I think that would
Anything
address
else,
the
Steve?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of options, but I mean, I know we pulled everybody through, well, we made several design changes for one of the schools when they were talking about ventilation and I think HVAC on the roof. And it just appears that here we are in historic downtown Mystic, and I got to look at a ginormous exhaust hood if I stand across the street. All right, that's all I got.
Okay. Kevin?
Yeah, so I just wanted, maybe my first question is to Bruce. I just needed an interpretation. So the bank was consistent with the use as far as zoning was concerned, but the bank had a leased property, which was the parking. So now we put in a intensification, but it doesn't have the leased property. So I don't fully understand, maybe I don't understand the regulation, but where is that the same use as what we had before?
Well, I'm not really sure I understand the question. So the bank
Let me
did
go over
have-
the question then. So the question
Yeah,
is,
sure.
we have a bank with a parking lot that handles 25 people. And now
Yes.
we have a proposed restaurant for 100+ people with no parking in back, right? And we're saying it still was consistent use as far as the regulations are concerned. But one has 25 parking spots. So I don't understand, is there I don't understand that part of the regulation. That's what I'm asking you, Bruce, just for an interpretation.
Sure. Yeah, no, I can answer that. So, yeah, yes, the bank did lease the property to the north there, the parking lot, and they had considerably more spaces than what is going to be proposed. There was also parking along that Bank Street entrance there in between this property and Mystic Pizza, and because that where the property line is, that parking went away too, and there's no way around it. There's much less parking than there was before.
Right.
But at the same time, the zoning regulations do allow, for the parking requirements in Mystic to be satisfied with the validation program. And because the regulation's written that way, this does meet zoning as long as they comply with the signage, they enroll in the validation program, provide us proof of participation each year. It meets parking because it's a commercial use and 100% can be satisfied with that. I understand the question and the concern, but it's just the way the regulation's written right now.
Okay, so that's why I just want to make sure we're in line with the regulation, because every logical, piece says we just lost, 20 plus spots, for the use that we're actually being asked to grant. So my only other question is, which I don't understand as well, is when we have a validation program, what is the algorithm and how many spots do we presently have in within the bank? How many have we granted to other restaurants or other businesses? And where does this extra 25 to 33 put us as far as an algorithm above or beyond the validation program?
Deb, was that addressed in the Mystic parking study at all? Do you know?
Right. I mean, this is a validation program. It's not a leasing of parking spaces. So we're not assigning parking spaces to every use in Mystic that needs parking. So there isn't an algorithm. It's literally it's just validation. If you can find a spot in there, this business needs to validate it. I just want to add to Bruce's answer about the bank use as well. There's been a bank on this site for over 100 years. So it clearly predates zoning. So there was no requirement for them to have those 25 spaces that they ended up leasing at some point. It was just something that was good for their business, apparently. But Bruce is right. I mean, the zoning regulations allow all the parking requirements to be satisfied by the validation program. I also just want to let you folks know that this month, Stonington and Groton are starting a parking management study. We've hired a parking management consultant to look at the areas on both sides of the bridge to see if there's a more efficient way to provide parking to visitors in Mystic. It's going to include looking at church parking lots, excess town property that Stonington seems to have, maybe putting some paid parking in along some of the streets. I mean, it's clear there's an issue here, and it might be able to be addressed by just managing the parking better. So we'll see.
Okay. And so my only comment is, but we know as a group, as Mystic residents, the people who are Mystic residents, a 25 to 33 additional parking spots, there is not on a weekend. I know Greg said sometimes. The answer is, I know that it's full, it seems like every weekend, and I know that it flows into every single neighborhood every single weekend. And 25 to 33, if we don't have an algorithm, seems to put us over the threshold, which is a qualitative comment, not a quantitative comment. That's all I have, Jeff.
Mm-hmm. I just had a couple of items. On Bruce, is there any regulation on how many tables you can fit into a space?
Not that I know of in the zoning regulations, maybe for, fire code and things like that, but it was reviewed by the fire marshal.
They're the only ones. There's nobody else that cares.
Maybe building code. I mean, maybe building code too. I mean, as long as it physically makes sense on the plan. There's really nothing in zoning that would prohibit the amount of tables.
Yes.
Jeff, are you asking about the tables inside or the ones on the patio, which seem to be pushed right up against the fence?
Well, if you look at the way those tables on the other restaurants are, they're up against the building and they're right on the sidewalk, so.
Yeah, no, I'm looking at that as well.
Space per table width-wise.
Yeah, where do you put a chair?
The table and a chair. And they're all supposed to have some rope around them, and I notice they still don't. That they're just left wide open in a lot of cases. No, I just wondered because it does seem like we're squeezing an awful lot into the building. On the case of the exhaust system, should there be something up there to screen it from the street, from the south? I guess from
I
the
think you
north.
can see it from the street, from the south.
You
It
can.
shows it on the elevation, but that's all the way in the back of the building. If you take a look at the
But you
back of the
might
building,
not be able to really see
it's
them.
on top of that stack coming out of the building. So there's no way you could see it from the south. You might be able to see it from the alleyway, from
The
Mystic
alleyway is
Pizza.
so steep. I mean, you aren't going to see it from the alleyway.
Well, from across the street from Chelsea Groton Bank, when you look up there, you might be able to
Oh,
see
you
it.
might be able to see it there.
Yeah, you'd
That's-
be able to see it.
But there is a chimney in the back too, existing now.
Yeah. And that would be my comment, is that it should be disguised as if it were a
Might
chimney, and then
disguise
we
it.
wouldn't mind.
Mm.
Well, actually, that's an interesting point because if you look at the south elevation, you see the chimney. And in the the north elevation, you see the chimney quite a bit higher than the
It's higher than.
stack.
but-
So that's an interesting point. You might not see the vent because you don't see the chimney.
Yeah. I never really noticed the chimney was there until the other day when I looked at it from the back. Because I've never noticed it from the street side.
Yeah.
of it.
So you may not notice in fact, I would say you wouldn't probably notice the exhaust fan.
I think the building is so big with the columns and everything, it attracts your eyes down there. You don't look at the part.
Yeah, and it's a pretty deep building also.
Yeah, it is big.
I would
On
think
the-
that if that stack is stainless steel, then you would notice it. The chimney is brick. That's why
Yeah.
you don't notice it.
But it's
Yeah,
not
but
gonna
you
be
don't see it
shiny.
in the south elevation.
It's
the
not
chimney.
reflective material. It's not. I don't think it would stand out. It'll get dirty and grimy after a while, so it'll be hidden. On the street trees, where do those go? Are they going to be a problem hanging over the street?
I
Well,
don't think so.
yeah.
Go ahead, Bruce.
I was going to say, I don't think so either. I mean, there's a pretty considerable sidewalk there between the street tree and West Main Street. The pin oak variety is actually, it's recommended by the town of Groton for a street tree. So, you know, the tree's designed for that type of environment. Will it be a problem with the tables someday when
Yeah,
it
that's what I
matures?
was wondering.
Possibly. Yeah.
Will it be? Well, I guess I'll just have to move the tables around or eliminate them.
Yeah.
How big are those?
Yeah. Pin oaks, I think they can get pretty large when they're mature. I mean, I think anywhere between 40 and 60 feet mature height, but it will take a long time to get that tall.
But the trunks must be pretty big. Where do the roots go?
Yeah, I mean, there is grass there.
Yeah, but they'll be under the sidewalk and.
Yeah.
Well, Pin oak's a very large tree, but not in our lifetime.
No, so we don't worry about it.
Well, I think we should worry about them because as soon as they get to be a good size, they're going to be cutting them down.
Yeah, I know, exactly. I was just joking.
I mean, it's not practical. You really should have something there that
Yeah.
provides some shade, but then doesn't. I mean, those patios, as far as I'm concerned, are already overcrowded.
They're
5
gonna-
tables.
But you can't have a big tree because there's not that much space between the tree and the front of the building.
Oh,
Right.
It's just the trunk that you worry about. And the trunk is, at
Right.
maturity is 18 inches caliper, so it's really not a problem.
but
The canopy of these trees is way up.
Hmm?
The canopy of these trees is way up high.
No, the branches come right out the side. It's a big tree when it gets older.
And the
Yeah.
root
It's a
system's gonna be
it's
going right
beautiful.
into the foundation.
Yes.
Very beautiful.
We're happy
Doesn't make sense.
Oh,
to,
That's why,
we're
that's
happy to
why I
look at it
think
with
those,
staff and make
the whole
a
two
change if
patios,
necessary.
hmm? I guess. And parking.
Well, if I,
how-
Mr. Chairman, if I could just make a suggestion on the trees, if the commission, would like, it's certainly something that staff and the applicant can work together. And try to identify a smaller species. You could easily make that comment, and we could work something out to try to get something a little smaller that is a street tree, but also may fit the space a little better.
Yeah. No, I don't know. It just doesn't look practical to me to fit a big, huge tree in a small area like that. But they try it and they'll cut it down. The
Well, if you
parking,
look at, excuse me, over at the Oyster Club, we had planted 10 years ago when they first got approved, we planted 3 trees in the art center property there. I don't know if anyone's noticed those, where they just redid a little park area. But
Mhm.
those trees were planted 10 years ago. I think they're similar type trees. They kind of grew up straight. They're not, they're actually, it's kind of an interesting thing to look at.
they're the
Um,
same ones.
and-
Where are they exactly on the?
They're in between the Oyster Club and the restrooms.
Mhm.
That little area between
I
there.
know what you're talking about, yeah. I'll have to go take a look at them. I'm just curious.
But we are open to switching those trees out to something a little more palatable to staff and the commission.
I just wondered from practicality point, not a tree expert. And the parking, there's no requirement, limit at all on how many parking spots are assigned to the art center. And they don't have a limit, they can go up to infinity.
apparently.
My point exactly, right.
I would just
15
think,
years ago, 15 years ago, we were talking about that same problem. How many times over has those parking spaces been sold?
Yeah.
but they charged enough then, so they never got filled up completely. But today, you go down there late in the afternoon on a weekend, and you see people driving around in circles looking for a spot. I mean, it is I don't know. I guess they just think it's easier to park there than walking a little bit further.
Is it possible at some point we could just say that is no longer viable? It's one thing to say, okay, yes, you can always use validated parking. At one point, well, who says it's viable validated parking, as opposed to, a guy letting out his 2 spaces in front of his garage? Is that viable validated parking? Of course not. Well, at some point we have to say the art museum's parking lot is no longer viable. It's at capacity.
Yeah.
I agree completely, Hal.
I'm
But
hoping we'll get some answers out of this parking management study. The guy who's been hired has helped out Bar Harbor, Maine, Newburyport, Massachusetts. He's very familiar with managing parking in tourist destinations. So I hope we'll get something good out of this.
Maybe it's self-policing. You just have fewer customers if they can't park.
Well, I think people
But it
do
doesn't
adjust.
come away.
If they knew
Well,
where to park, it would be okay. So I'd have to be able to send them to Gravel Street or the
Yeah,
far reaches of High Street someplace. They don't
Yeah,
ever
There's
get there.
nowhere on Gravel Street you can park.
it's so narrow. Yeah.
And they go up on High Street and the cars are jutting out into the travel lanes. I don't understand why the police don't give them tickets. Well, I do understand why, but it's dangerous going up High Street when you go up past Mystic Pizza and then you take a right onto High Street. The cars that are parked right along there, they're they're out in the travel lane.
Oh, are they? Hmm.
I
Oh,
think we have to keep in mind that this is a problem that a lot of towns would like to have.
you're right.
Yeah.
But also, we need to also think really hard about addressing other means of transportation that eliminates the need for all the cars. And
That's
you know,
the answer. Bring the trolleys back.
well, the trolleys maybe, and then when we do have residential construction going on and it's apartments or whatever it is, we need to provide more places for people to walk, bicycle, skateboard, whatever it is that they get there without their car.
Take the train.
Well, whatever it is, you know, but I think that it's not just trying to meet the demand of all the cars, because we never will. It's getting people to still come, enjoy Mystic, leave their car home.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Put it. All right. I didn't have any other questions. I don't know what people's thoughts are on the motion. Whether we want to add anything to it.
I think for me, this project in particular has addressed some issues that I think we need to review our regulations a little bit. That maybe there should be a minimum of handicap spaces that are available regardless. And
Some of these places in other areas along Main Street have no parking at all. They have to either count on street parking or validation. All they have is a strip of property that has no free space around.
Which is typical of any urban situation. Any
Yeah.
city has exactly that.
Hmm? That's
Every
what we
city
have
has
here.
exactly that.
Hmm?
they have public transportation though as well.
That's true.
Not much anymore. It goes away. They have tried public transportation in Mystic.
Not really.
Hmm?
Not
It
really.
hasn't been very successful. Well, usually you can find a parking spot that isn't too far away. All right. So does anybody have any thoughts on the motion on what we want to do with this? I've heard.
As it stands, I'm going to be voting no.
But if we turn it down, then we have to have some justification, which could be parking.
My justification is that the two patios are too big for the property, and the parking situation is unreasonable.
The patios, I mean, they're sitting outside. When you walk down Main Street, there are a lot of people that use.
That's true, but this is because of the pandemic and the emergency laws that went in, and that they got to get permission from the state to be on the state properties that are sidewalks of Mystic.
But they've been doing that before the pandemic, and some of the restaurants have had outside seating.
Not
as much, but they have had it.
No, I disagree.
Hmm?
The Mariner has, because the Mariner is on private property. But the chapter 1 across the street's on state property, I believe, and Via Amelia is, I believe.
Just a clarification, the Mariner actually did have zoning approval to put their tables out in front of the building on the sidewalk. There is a process to do that pre-COVID. So there was one approval.
Right, I agree. I knew they were legally doing it, but the other ones are only doing it because of the emergency laws or whatever.
They were able to do expedited permitting to do that. It's possible once the COVID situation is done, they may come back in to get a permanent approval.
And validation, parking validation would allow it.
Yep. That's correct.
Oh, there's,
We need to fix that.
seems like we have a regulation problem,
And
not a parking problem. Or maybe both.
Because we don't have grounds to dismiss it because of parking, if in fact validation is permitted, right? I don't think we have grounds to
oh,
To deny it.
as long as the validation is realistic, it says that's what the motion talks about, is that they have to demonstrate that they do have parking validation available.
And what happens if they can't? Because during the weekends, nobody can park there, or that not enough people can park there. If they have to provide evidence, what happens then if they just say, hey, we're not seeing enough validated parking?
Doesn't say that. Doesn't it just say that they have to be willing to validate the parking?
It says evidence of participation must be submitted
Right.
with the site plan and
Which
be
means they have an agreement.
annually provided. So, oh, it
means
just says they're
agreement with the
participating.
Arc
You're right.
Association.
Just says participating. They're participating. One guy got to park there or 50 parked there. Doesn't matter.
And I would be checking that. And I would make sure that they are enrolled before they get a certificate of occupancy. That was a suggested condition.
But they can be enrolled, but unable to use it.
Yeah, that doesn't mean that there's any spaces there.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that's the way the regulation's written right now. It's the way the motion is.
If the lot is full, then people are using it and they can get validated going to this restaurant, as well as they can get validated if they went to, if they went to Stift or they went to Oyster Club and they had one drink at Oyster Club, they could get validated for a half hour. They could walk down the street, go to this restaurant, get validated for an hour because they sit down for a dinner or something. So if it's in use, it's validation. Validation works great if people buy into it. Some restaurants in town do buy into it, others don't. I think the ones I know the Oyster Club is probably the highest validator in downtown. It works great. People love it for $2 or $3 off for parking. They're ecstatic. So it does work, and the regulation may not be perfect. It wasn't perfect 4 or 5 years ago before this regulation. So hopefully, as Deb stated, that when the study is completed, that we, get some other options out there that could make sense on both sides of the fence.
Okay. I'm going to make a motion then. See what happens with it. Motion to approve the site plan SIT 20-08, 54 West Main Street, Restaurant Brewery, 54 Brewery with the following modifications. The owner shall participate in a parking validation program. Signs shall be posted at the entrances, cash registers, menus, and at all outdoor seating areas to notify customers of participation in the parking validation program. Evidence of participation must be submitted with the site plan application and be annually provided to the Office of Planning and Development Services. 2, technical items as raised by staff shall be addressed. In approving this plan, the Commission finds that this application is consistent with the design objectives of Section 3.3-2B MDD, design and building standards of the zoning regulations, in that it will enhance the unique qualities of Mystic, will preserve and enhance the historic features of the existing building, and is in keeping with the goals of a plan of conservation and development. Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we'll vote on them.
I was going to say, should we be putting some comment? Obviously, every one of us is concerned about the parking. And that this is, just doesn't work. It's just that the regulation allows it.
I think that's correct, but I also think it was good to hear that the town is actually doing something with Stonington to try to resolve, at least mitigate this problem, which is the first time I've heard something at least that positive in the past years.
With both towns working together, yes.
Right. And like they should, actually.
Maybe that is a good solution because I mean, they have done something in Stonington with Cottrell Street to improve the park, add some parking there.
That was the low-hanging fruit.
Yes, but every space counts. I don't know that we want to. I mean, it's probably outside the emotion. That should be something maybe we want to keep track of separately or can put on as an action item on our regular business. Does anyone have anything else to say? If nobody has anything else, then we'll vote on the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Barbara just muted herself.
Barbara,
You're muted.
Barbara's muted.
Yeah, and I think she was going to vote nay. Barbara? you
Oh,
there?
I'm sorry.
There you go.
No,
No, you aren't voting?
I'm voting no.
Okay. Any abstentions? Then the motion is carried 4 in favor, 1 opposed. Barbara Tarbox is opposed. All right. Moving on. Old Business Conservation Commission draft.
Mr. Chairman, there's one more
I'm
motion
sorry,
for
we
the
have
coastal
to-
site plan. And before you start, I do see a typo that I made there. Just you could sub out the mixed use building and just say 54 West Main Street Restaurant Brewery. That's what I would suggest.
We have
That's what I was,
Main Street Restaurant Brewery.
and instead of mixed use building there, yeah. On the bottom, so this is a coastal site plan too, so you do need an additional motion.
I was looking at the top part where you had an extra 54 in the first.
Yeah, no, I know.
Well, I guess you're right. We have to approve the CAM. I'll move to approve the coastal site plan for 54 West Main Street because it is consistent with all applicable coastal policies. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we'll vote on the motion then. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion is carried unanimously. All right.
Thank you.
So you're going to give us a sample of beer after
Sure.
at the Seahorse. Huh? Old Business Conservation Commission draft open space. I guess you only have 2 sets of comments, Bruce.
Yes, I received comments from Sue and you. And yeah, those are the comments I received.
Who else has them?
No, that's what I received. You know, planning staff also did our review on it. We are, you know, working through it, and well, we did our review and provide the Conservation Commission with a formalized set of comments as well.
You'll forward these comments. I don't know if we need a motion for them or they can just be forwarded.
Yeah, well, we were going to submit them as planning staff for the Conservation Commission's next meeting. So I think what we were hoping from the Planning and Zoning Commission were to just forward your individual comments to the Commission as the Planning and Zoning Commission. So I could just forward your comments along with Sue's comments to them and
Just say those,
from the whole.
She go.
unless the commission, other members want to have anything more formal.
I didn't see, where are Jeff's comments? I didn't see your comments.
And I didn't see Sue's comments.
Yeah, that was in the package.
They were in the
Sue's-
package.
Sue and Jeff's comments, yeah.
In the package. Mine were in the email that Deb sent out, Gillette sent out this afternoon.
Okay, okay, thank you.
I can briefly, my concerns were that other than it's a lot of philosophy was in there, that the thing that doesn't really recognize how the town government rule works and how the regulations tie in with the commission, and that their system for evaluating potential open space with that long list of attributes with equal weighting and coming up with a numerical value when you're only doing it once every few years is not realistic. And that tax thing is not very realistic either. Those were my main concerns with it. I didn't go into any detail because it's just too much to talk about.
Yeah, so Jeff, this is Kevin, just in support of what you wrote, understanding that I'm somewhat new to this process. I didn't actually understand, which is somewhat consistent with your thoughts. Why are they really doing this? Because they appear to do it outside the processes of the existing government. And while I think every single one of us will say that conservation is really important, there was no ties to anything else. It was like, I couldn't tell whether it was a precise process at any point or a wish list. And maybe they just need to be defined a great deal more. But I thought in your first two paragraphs, you nailed the verbiage that I thought about. I just couldn't say it based on my lack of tenure. So that to me, hits exactly what, our approach should be, I believe. So.
Yeah, I think their real main purpose is to evaluate parcels for open space use and then they're supposed to come up with an index or a listing of all the existing open space that exists today, which is in their plan. But it's the action part that it looked like they were writing a tree hugger's Bible or something, rather than giving a direction. And I talked to the town clerk about what the commission is supposed to do, because they go online and see what's on the website for the town for this commission. It's not very clear. And I guess that's the only thing that really tells them what they're supposed to do.
Right. So maybe the lack of clarity just kind of continued in what I think what all of us read. So it's good. And I agree with you on the numerical side, trying to create an index, several years in advance. And an index, as you know, is rarely a quantitative, summary. And so how are you going to do that? To me, that puts us in a untenable position, almost like the parking lot situation where we all know it's not logical, but the numbers add up in this particular way. I just didn't like the template that they began to lay out in that same fashion. So be it.
But I mean, we as a commission could state something like that, or I think just forwarding the comments on might do it.
I think your comments covered it.
Mm-hmm. All right. So you'll just forward them on as comments from the commission and Bruce.
Yeah, if that's the consensus.
Unless
And that's
you think-
Are they going to be forwarded as comments of the commission or as of individual commissioners?
No, from commission.
Sure.
Hmm?
Well, it's up to you. I do have
Unless somebody wants to summarize a motion, we could do that and just say attach these comments to a motion like that.
I would just as soon see them go out as individual comments from commissioners.
Yeah, if people aren't really ready for that, then they should just be individuals. Unless somebody had a thought for
I would like to say that I was very impressed with Sue's comments. Very thorough, very scientific. I was very impressed with.
Thanks, Barbara. Appreciate that. I'm interested in it.
Yes, it showed that. All right. So you'll just forward those then, Bruce.
Yeah, so it sounds like, yeah, I'll just forward them individually as comments from you, Mr. Chairman, and Sue. So,
Mhm. All right. And you're forwarding your own. And you're the staff support, right?
I'm the staff support, so we'll also be forwarding our staff comments to them too.
Bruce, are we going to have an opportunity to see what you send out?
Yeah, I can share that with everyone.
Okay,
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'll have that in the next meeting packet for everyone.
thank you.
All right. Then moving on then to new business. Do we have any new applications?
We do not.
No referrals? Zoning regulations. Did you want to make a statement on that, Deb? Or?
Sure. So Diane was out sick today. She's been doing the most work on this and has actually started revising the language. So I'd really like her to be here to listen to your discussion of these items. So I'm hoping we can do that at the next meeting.
So we'll just continue this item. Mhm. Commission reports, report of chair. I have nothing to report on. Does anyone in the commission have anything to report?
I have a couple things.
Yes, Hal.
Well, I guess we'll get to look at the ASP approval report later, just noting that what's missing from it is still the Crystal Lake Road Old Geico building, our wonderful seasonal window with the FU still spray painted on it is still boldly emblazoned. Working on a decade towards this. And I don't even see an action on it anymore. So don't want it to drop away. This is kind of nuts that I think last time we looked at it, there was discussions happening on a way forward with the owner, and that's insane. It's a derelict building. And as soon as those leaves drop off all winter long, it's worse. I did have, on a slightly lighter note, I could have done this during communications, but nobody reached out to me, so I'll bring it up here. An email exchange with Patrice Granatowski about Colchester School and Butler School. So this will be coming up, the fact that at some point we're going to have to be deciding what to do about it. This is almost, 7 or 8 years since it was decided that those schools will be closed. And we're just coming up on it next year, they'll be closed. But we've known it for 7 or 8 years. Well, because the Board of Education hasn't turned it over to the town, nothing's been looked into in terms of what to do about those buildings. And I thought that was, being in the planning group here, a little advanced planning was certainly called for, not just wait till it's vacant and then we'll deal with it. But right now, according to her, that's exactly what's happening. We're waiting for it to become vacant so the Board of Ed can then decide that they don't want it. And then we'll take a look at what we can do with it. That's years behind how that should work. The moment they decide it's vacant, we should have a plan of action for doing something with it. And we're doing the opposite. Lastly, for my favorite apartments on Pleasant Valley Road, the path still doesn't seem to be there. The path that's supposed to connect it down to Route 12. It's just an overgrown mess. I can kind of see maybe where it might be going in. And I know it's not supposed to be paved, but it should be at least cleared or plan on being cleared. And I don't see any excavation equipment there anymore. And they're kind of getting ready to close in the building. And I have this great fear that somebody's going to look down the hill and say, oh yeah, I guess that's good enough. And it won't be good enough unless people can walk there. Otherwise, they're going to be walking in the street to get to subbase. An extra 3 blocks to get around. That's what I got.
Can we get, didn't we have a report of actions that we got once a month or something, Deb, from items?
Yeah, from the code enforcement official.
Mhm.
He hadn't had anything that pertained to site plans in the past couple of months, so he didn't produce that report, but I'll certainly ask him about the Lake Road building.
Mhm. Yeah. This business, I think Hal has a good point on the planning or lack of planning for schools sites. Who's supposed to do this? Is town manager's responsibility to?
Well,
Didn't
I
he
mean,
ha-
ultimately, you folks will review it under 824.
Yeah, but he's saying
Whatever,
plan for it.
that's right. There is, the town manager does have a small committee to look at excess properties that's owned by the town, to propose uses to the town council, who will then choose what they think is appropriate and then forward it to planning and zoning under 824. So
Mhm.
you're right, Hal, that has not started yet.
It's insane. And I used as an example in my discussion that my personal experience was that one of the most recent buildings, which is now quite a while ago, at the subbase, we planned on putting it there while there was a couple years in advance of previous buildings still being there and occupied. There were apartments already there and being used and kids playing. And we planned on it being knocked down a couple years later so that we could build something a year after that. And that wasn't thought to be excessive. I mean, it was just a 5-year Milcon project. It was the way it worked. Here we've had much more time than that, and we're just waiting for it to be empty. It's crazy.
Mhm.
No, I think you're right. I'll forward that on to the town manager so that maybe he can start working on that now.
Mhm. That would be good. Could you say that's a concern of the commission? Does it give it any more weight than just an individual?
Yes,
Yeah.
I agree.
That way we're not getting it when we're already under the gun to approve something. We'll be talking about it as
Well,
it
the
happens.
thing is that typically these things then languish for another 5 years or,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, but it takes a lot of input or thought to say.
No, I understand, certainly.
Call up Dave Collins and he'll put it in the paper and they'll get him upset. Report of staff.
I talked to the code enforcement official about Spicer Mansion that Barbara brought up at the last meeting. The courts are reopening. They have a huge backlog, and zoning issues are at the bottom of the priority list. So as of right now, there's no action. There's no court date.
Okay.
Is that
Anything
it,
else?
Deb?
Yeah.
Could I ask one other question?
Sure.
And so the issue we talked about again is the parking, and we understand the regulation, but if in a week someone walks in with another large restaurant and wants to put it in, as of tonight, there's nothing we can really do to say that it's illegal because they meet the qualification. And to me, we're sitting at, such a high level, and we know that it'd be irresponsible unless we in some way chose some sort of moratorium as far as the validation until we can get an algorithm, because we know the numbers don't stack up. We know that, right? So we can't continue down this illogical path. Although it's a great regulation, it basically needs review, in my opinion, immediately. And I don't know if that appears on a staff report, but that's just my opinion, that basically says we know there's something wrong here, and if possible, prior to getting another big one in where we're handcuffed, we need to review that immediately and or potentially put a moratorium on, unless it's my restaurant. I was joking.
Of course.
Or another brewery.
We'll add that to the
But it
discussion.
could be, right? We don't know. We don't know. I don't know the funnel, and there's going to be some changes, but we know there's something wrong there. And so I don't know if that's part of your staff report or the staff could take that up. But as a group, again, similar to what Hal just said, we know there's something wrong in the process. And if we can at least weigh in, other than just that we're starting to meet on the parking, I think that would be appropriate.
But is it self-policing?
We'll add that to the discussion of zoning regs for the next meeting. And just so you're aware, a moratorium is also a zoning text amendment. It's not just a decision by the commission. It's
No, we can't.
public hearing and all of that. So it's also a couple of month process.
But it's in some ways, it's self-policing, because if people don't want to park 2 miles away and go to the businesses, they're gonna not have the business. They'll shut down.
Well, but the people who are providing parking are being punished as well, because, you know, a lot of the business in downtown Mystic is shared, right? And I think what Greg Feta said was that no one's ever gone downtown and not found a parking space, but how many people just simply don't go there?
Yep.
You know, I mean, I know that I don't drive through downtown Mystic at 20 Ave because I know the drawbridge is gonna.
Hmm.
I've been down there many times and could not find parking and went back home.
Or you just don't go. You know, you go somewhere else.
But
So that's what we need to avoid.
I think unfortunately you're saying, I understand the thing of the pressure on parking will start to eliminate people. But by the time that happens, well, one, the wrong people are being punished.
hmm.
You can't, that doesn't direct it to people who are causing a problem and not part of the solution. So I
Wow.
think it's just a bad way to go. It's one thing to control rents that way, that makes sense, and control development. But when you talk about parking, it just clogs it up for absolutely everybody, including people who are just trying to get from the left-hand side of the town to the right-hand side of the town to
Yep.
get to go get groceries.
That's right.
Well, maybe it's something that this parking advisor or whatever he is consultant will help us with. But I think it's multi, you know, this issue is going to not be solved by just providing more parking.
Agree.
Oh,
We can't
right.
we can't provide enough.
No, you can't. It's like building highways. You can't.
No, or unless it's like New London where they take down part of the neighborhood, you know, you start knocking down the residential buildings to make way for commercial.
Hmm. So you got to talk people into expanding Shoreline East.
I think
Yes.
it's probably a lot of little things that, you know, it's the low-lying fruit, but you just pick the easy ones and keep picking, and pretty soon you help the situation, but you don't ever solve it.
Yeah.
And I don't think we want to.
No,
This
I
is a
think
good problem to have.
a lot of people like it. I think they like to walk. You know, that it isn't a negative.
You know, I
issue.
think that if they not only validated parking, but if they validated people who ride a bike, so that maybe you get a discount when you go to the restaurant, or you get a coupon to go get an ice cream cone or something else, you know, if you show up on a bicycle. Those are the kinds of things that, well, it's you know, thinking in a different way about how we solve this problem.
Yes. No, that's what you want. Okay. Did you have anything else, Deb?
No.
And then we have the ASP report. Does anyone have any questions on that? If not, I'll make a motion for adjournment.
Second.
Moved and seconded. So we adjourn at, what time is it? 8:45. We'd had zoning to talk about, it'll probably be 22:45.
All right, thanks, everybody.
Thank you very
All.
Thanks.
Hey.
So we'll see you on the 13th, is it?